There's a moment in every life, usually quiet, unnoticed by the world, where a person decides whether they'll live as who they truly are or remain a performance. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and thinker who spent his life mapping the deep terrain of the human psyche, believed that much of our suffering comes from the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. But he also saw something deeper, that the people who hurt us the most don't hold the power we think they do. Not really, not in the ways that matter. They can't hurt you, Jung might say, not as comfort but as a challenge. Because what we perceive as pain from the outside is often just the reawakening of something wounded long ago. The cruelty of others, their judgments, their betrayals, these do sting. But the wound they land in is already there, already open. They touch a nerve built from years of internal division, the split between who we are and who we've been forced to become. For Jung, the central conflict of modern life wasn't between good and evil, right and wrong, light and darkness. It was between the conscious self, the part we show to the world, and the shadow self, the rejected and disowned parts of our identity. When we encounter someone who offends us, who shames us, who seems to threaten our peace, what's actually happening is a mirror being held up to our own denied truths. The anger we feel, the pain, isn't just about them, it's about us. And this realization can be unbearable at first, but it's also the beginning of freedom. They can't hurt you, not because they're harmless, but because their power ends where your self-awareness begins. The more we know our own darkness, the less others can use it against us. The insults bounce off, the manipulation fails, the rejection doesn't sink in. Jung taught that by turning inward, by facing the shadow, we reclaim the authority we've unknowingly given away. We stop being victims of other people's projections because we've stopped denying our own. This is not a call to indifference. Jung was no stoic. He didn't ask people to pretend pain didn't matter. On the contrary, he believed pain was the most honest signal the soul could send. But he also believed that pain was a compass, not a prison. When someone wounds us, especially deeply, it's a moment rich with revelation. Why does this cut so deep? What belief about myself is being exposed? Do I fear I am unlovable, weak, invisible? That's where the healing lives, not in defeating the person who hurt us, but in dissolving the story that gave their actions power in the first place. We live in a culture obsessed with strength and control, but Jung reminded us that the path to real inner power doesn't look like domination. It looks like integration, the courage to face what we've hidden, the grace to forgive what we've buried, the insight to recognize that most of the time when we say, "they hurt me," what we really mean is, "they touch the part of me I've never learned how to hold." So when Jung says, "they can't hurt you," he's not dismissing your pain. He's inviting you into a radical kind of honesty, the kind that transforms suffering into self-knowledge, the kind that turns pain into a teacher, the kind that makes you whole. When someone wounds you, it feels personal. Instinctively, we recoil, defend, retaliate. We build narratives around villains. We cast ourselves as the wronged, the misunderstood, the noble sufferer. But Carl Jung was not interested in stories that keep us comfortable. He cared about what's real. And what's real, he said, is often harder to accept than the pain itself. That the people who trigger us are often showing us something we haven't yet faced within. It sounds cruel at first, almost like blaming the victim. But it isn't about blame. It's about liberation. As long as the source of your suffering lives outside of you, your boss, your partner, your parents, your critics, you remain tethered to their choices. You stay stuck in a loop of resentment and reaction. Jung invites you to break the loop, to look at the enemy and ask, why this person? Why now? What are they activating in me that was already alive? This is not to say people don't act cruelly. They do. They lie. They betray. They humiliate. But their behavior is only the spark. The fuel is already inside you. That's the painful part, and the hopeful part. Because if the real fire is within, then so is the power to put it out. Jung believed we see ourselves most clearly in conflict. The people we despise, the ones we judge and criticize and mock, often represent qualities we've exiled from our own identity. Maybe we see arrogance in others because we've been taught to bury our own confidence. Maybe we feel disgust towards someone's weakness because we've denied our own vulnerability. Jung called this projection not just a psychological defense, but a spiritual blindfold. When you project your shadow onto someone else, you're not seeing them. You're seeing yourself, distorted and disowned. And here's the brutal irony. The more you fight the image, the more power it has over you. This is why hatred never leads to peace, why revenge never brings closure. Because the enemy is not outside, not entirely. And until you reconcile with the part of yourself you've made an enemy of, no one can touch you without reopening the wound. They can't hurt you, because the pain doesn't begin with them. The pain begins when you see them not as people, but as threats to your fragile sense of self. Once that identity hardens, once you decide, I am this and not that, you become vulnerable to everything that contradicts it. The freer you are internally, the less any insult or betrayal can define you. Because it doesn't land on a fixed surface. There's nothing to cling to, no ego to protect, just presence. This is not detachment, it's clarity. Jung wasn't asking us to become cold or indifferent. He wanted us to become awake, to see that most of the hurt we carry isn't about the world. It's about our unexamined story of who we think we are. The narrative that says, I must be respected, I must be loved, I must be right. These aren't truths, they're demands, and the moment someone refuses them, we suffer. But if we loosen our grip, if we stop demanding that the world mirror back only what we approve of, we stop being its prisoner. You don't get free by avoiding pain. You get free by understanding it. You walk through it, willingly, eyes open, no mask. That's what Jung offered. Not relief, but revolution. Not comfort, but clarity. You stop seeing enemies and start seeing messages. Each hurt becomes a map, a guide, a signal pointing toward what in you still needs your attention, your care, your integration. So when he says, they can't hurt you, it isn't arrogance. It's the voice of someone who knows that true power comes not from being invulnerable, but from being whole. And when you are whole, there is nothing left to defend. They can't hurt you doesn't mean life stops being painful. It means the pain no longer controls who you are. Jung never promised a life without wounds. He offered something deeper, a way to stop letting those wounds define you. You'll still be misunderstood. You'll still be let down. But the suffering doesn't have to hollow you out. Not if you understand that what hurts most isn't what they did. It's what it awakens in you. That's the shift. When you stop trying to avoid pain and start asking what it's teaching you, you take your power back. Not power over others, but power over your own story. You stop being just a reaction to what the world throws at you. You become grounded, integrated, whole. For Jung, wholeness was never about perfection. It was about honesty. Owning your anger, your fear, your needs. Facing the shadow instead of pretending it doesn't exist. And when you do, something strange happens. The people who used to shake you no longer reach the core. Their opinions lose weight. Their rejection doesn't echo as loud. Because you're no longer fighting yourself on the inside. This is what freedom looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the end of self-abandonment. You remember who you are beneath the masks, the part no one can touch, the self that was never broken, only buried. And once you reconnect with that, no one can hurt you. Not really. Because nothing real in you depends on their approval, their permission, or their love. You are already whole,